We're a unique podcast for families of faith. Produced by parents and pastors who understand and appreciate how hard it is to maintain your faith in a hostile culture. We're here to encourage and support you in the most vital role of all, parenting. If you're feeling overwhelmed and afraid, it's okay. You're not alone. Brilliantly Brave is hosted by two honest and engaging dads with 9 kids between them. A road tripper, author, and pastor, Father Brad Matthias, and iShine founder, solo parenting expert, and all-around foodie, Mr. Robert Beeson. Join us each week as we explore and engage with some of the most intriguing, inspiring, outrageous, and awesome parents in the world. This is Brilliantly Brave.
Hi, and welcome to Brilliantly Brave Parenting. I am your host, Pastor Brad Matthias, and my sidekick, Robert Beeson.
Sidekick, I mean...
Come on.
Come on.
We're like 14 into it now. This is like our 15th episode.
You would think that you would change the sidekick thing, because every single week I say sidekick. Really? That's sidekick?
That's why I do it. It works. It works.
Okay.
It gets you every time. So I'm going to keep doing it until it doesn't bother you. Then I'll have to switch tactics.
Okay. Doesn't bother me.
All right. Okay. We'll see. All right. Well, for those of you who've been regularly tuning in to Brilliantly Brave, you know we have a diverse group of experts, if you will. Some parents, some authors, some are heads of ministries. And as a result, you get a diverse view of parenting and the challenges of parenting, issues that are happening in today's society, the culture war that we all live with and are engaged with. As Christians, it's always a challenge to really push back against the cultural norms that are sort of stealing the Christian heritage of our faith right out from underneath our noses. And so as a podcast, our hope is to identify great places for you to go for new ideas and new resources to support you in that journey of parenthood, where you are trying to equip your kids with faith, but also to help churches to find the right resources that they might need to effectively reach the preteen and tween years, which is an unusual challenge. I know, Robert, you and I have raised 9 kids, or are in the process of raising 9 kids.
Yeah.
Would you say the tween years are the hardest?
Well, the tween years are the ones that are the least less resourced, or whatever. There's not as much out there to help parents through those years, and it's as we've discussed many, many times within iShine and TGA, it is in my view, the most critical time for us to really engage our kids. And that's why I'm so excited about this interview, because there's someone that shares the same passion for reaching this age group. So yeah, the tween years are a very challenging, but can be they are a very critical period of time in a kid's life. Yeah.
And I think for most parents, the journey is sort of ignorant bliss until the kids hit like 11, 10, 11. And then suddenly there's a problem. And they're suddenly scrambling to find resources or books or someone who can tell them
that's right
what to do, right? And so we want to try and be preemptive for our parents. And so today's guest is a man who has been active and really at the forefront of reaching this age group for over a decade. His name is Sean Sweet. He's a pastor. He's from California, and he's joining us today. Welcome to Brilliantly Brave, Sean.
Hey, guys. How you doing?
Doing great. It's great to have you here.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thanks for having me. I'm excited about what you guys are doing. Brilliantly Brave.
Yeah, we're all laughing because none of us feel brilliant or brave, right?
Well, I was going to say that's a good title for a parenting podcast. I have 3 kids of my own, and brilliant and brave are 2 things that I would love to have more of. So thanks for doing this.
Oh, it's our pleasure. We're doing this as an extension of the Tween Gospel Alliance, which is an affiliation of different Christian ministries that have noticed there's a need to focus on this age group. And as I've studied your bio and looked through your history on your website, the ministry that you started, 456, is been around since 2007? Is that when it started?
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And it started as just a group of people who across the nation, across the United States, were seeing the need for intentional preteen ministry and realizing that something needed to be done to raise the value of ministry to preteens within churches.
That's great. That's such an awesome calling.
Yeah, and it's with some humility that we approach this, because Robert and I have been involved with the TGA since 2012, 13, something like that. And so you guys were almost a decade ahead of us in forming an affiliation of ministries and leaders to address the issue. And yet we didn't know about each other until
I know.
just recently. Yeah. So it tells you how separate some of the different movements of churches are in that they don't overlap. And so once I heard about you and read what you'd done and began to recognize how many people we knew mutually, I was like, oh my gosh, we have to have him on this podcast, because not only is he ahead of us, but he has been sort of a champion of this before anyone talked about it.
That's right. And tell us, Sean, what got you into that? I mean, what was the thing that drove you into, for me, getting into tween ministry was becoming a single dad and raising tweens on my own. I realized how little there was out there. What was it in your life that, like, just the light bulb went off and said, we've got to take this serious?
Yeah, so I actually grew up in a home that we weren't practicing Christianity. In fact, my dad was, an atheist and would say things like Christians are weak and they just need a crutch, those kind of things. So, of course, that's what I grew up thinking. And got to high school. I was involved with the YMCA as a camp counselor, and I can remember this one time. He was a preteen, and he came to camp, and I was his leader. I was like the high school leader for him, and he was a strong Christian. So he tried to talk to me about Christ, and by the end of the week, I think I had said some things to kind of shake his faith, and just kind of spoke against what he was telling me and tried to use logic and reasoning. But I left realizing that I didn't know a whole lot about what Christianity was all about. So my mom had started attending church because my brother had started attending church because his girlfriend was attending church. And so they actually started attending Sunset Christian Center in Rocklin, California. And when I graduated from high school, my mom gave me a Bible. And I was like, okay, thanks. Huh. But I took it, and when I moved away and went to college, I realized, I should probably know what the Christians think so that I can make better fun of them, and so that I can poke holes in their, be a better arguer against Christianity. So I started reading the Bible from that perspective and with that goal in mind of trying to find all the holes and flaws and all that. And as I was reading, the Holy Spirit convicted me, and I became a Christian just by reading the Bible. Wow. So I started attending Sunset, which later changed its name to Destiny. And I was going to school to become a school teacher. And so I was involved, I was going to Sac State University, got my teaching credentials and was going through the student teaching program, and they have you do a younger grade and an older grade, and I was really drawn towards the older grades, 4th, 5th grade, somewhere in there, and I ended up getting a job as a school teacher. So I taught in the public schools for 7 years, and during that time I was going to church. I'd accepted Christ. I actually went to a Billy Graham crusade and accepted Christ. Mm-hmm. And my dad actually started attending church, and he received Christ at something like age 65 or 70. And so our family was going to church. I started getting involved with the ministries here. And when the children's pastor, he left he became Bible man, Robert T. Schlipp. And so he went off and was running around in spandex. And
that's a small world, man. That's awesome.
I'd been his right-hand man. I'd become like super involved with the children's ministry. So the senior pastor invited me out to coffee, and I was like, "What? This doesn't happen." And so I went with him, and he presented to me the opportunity to come on staff as the children's pastor. And I was a school teacher at the time. I had tenure, and I could think of at least 3 reasons why that was a bad idea: June, July, and August. There's 3 reasons
right,
why
exactly.
I didn't want to leave what I was doing. And, so I said, thanks, I'll think about it. And I thought, no, I'm going to say no tomorrow. But that whole next day, the Lord really got a hold of me, and I was called into ministry. And so, took the Berean classes as I started this position as the children's pastor, and I was overseeing birth through fifth grade. But having been a school teacher for fourth and fifth graders for 7 years, I was like, why are these kids all together? Why do we have the first graders and the fifth graders together in this big gym? Which, I had just kind of gone along with it before when I was helping, but becoming the leader of the ministry, I realized it's like having people that speak two different languages in the same service, and you're trying to minister to them both. And so right away I was like, you know what, let's split up the fourth and fifth graders from the younger kids. And so we did that, and I would always tend to be in the fourth and fifth grade room and get people to volunteer to lead the other room. So I went to the senior pastor and I said, I think I'd really like to just focus on this age group, and I'm wondering if we can make it a separate ministry from our church. And he said no. And he said that's not something that I could ever see us doing, really, unless we grew to be huge. And so I said, okay. And Superstart came to town. Superstart is that weekend conference for preteens. They came to town about a year later. I had an assistant who came on that year, and she was really passionate about children's ministry and younger kids. So but the combination of having this assistant who was really passionate about it and having Superstart come to town, which really helped to legitimize ministry to preteens, these were the two catalysts that changed the senior pastor's mind. So I call it my self-induced demotion. I went from overseeing birth through fifth to just overseeing fourth and fifth, and it's now a separate ministry at our church, separate from the children's ministries. So that's kind of how I ended up being the preteen pastor. And at that time, I was really into going to conferences, children's pastors' conferences, and learning as much as I could. But now I was the preteen pastor. So I wanted to find a preteen ministry conference, and I couldn't find any. So the junior high pastor at the time said, why don't you start your own? So I did. And that was 2007, and that's when 456 really got its start. People came from around the country. We had 125 people from the United States and Canada at that first conference. And and out of that, there were 9 of us that got together and had a retreat afterward and came and started and organized 456. So that's how 456 was born, and it was volunteer run until just 2 years ago when our church said, why don't we take this on as a ministry of our church? We'll hire some help for Sean in the preteen ministry, and that can be his part-time part of what he does. So now I'm overseeing the preteen ministry here part-time, and then running 456 part-time.
So you are completely immersed in the world of preteen ministry.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
So for our listeners, 456 would be the 4th, 5th, and 6th grades of school, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So 9 to 12-year-old, basically. And when you say totally immersed, I am even more so now than ever because I have 2 preteen daughters. I've got a 4th grade daughter and a 6th grade daughter, 9 and 12. And that the difference between 9 and 12 is incredible.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yes. Robert has 3 daughters. I have 2.
Okay.
So
we're fairly acquainted with that, the dynamics and the challenges. And, it's a great period of life, too. It's just everything changes.
Yeah. There's that research paper put out by the American Middle School Association that says that between 10 and 15, kids change more than any other time of their life, except the first 2 years of life. And that's physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They are change is the name of the game for preteens. They are changing in incredible ways.
Absolutely. Yeah. We've become students of some of the research from Orange, from the Barna Group, from Kinnaman and other leaders who studied these transitions in society. And it's becoming more and more apparent to the general population and to parents that the age of awareness, or sort of the age of accountability, is sliding earlier and earlier, in part because of the digital revolution. Our kids are being exposed to ideas and images and thoughts much earlier because of the accessibility to that media. Have you experienced that in your ministry? Have you noticed a change over the last few years?
I would say yes and no. And here's what I mean. I think there's definitely, unarguably, more exposure to, to all sorts of information and images, and so in that way, yes, preteens are different now than they were a decade or 2 decades ago when I was a school teacher. But in lots of ways, just the way God's wired us up to, human development wise, the same processes are still taking place. It's a different navigation. It's a different ocean, but the same boat. And so I'd say yes, in this ocean that we have now, more waves are getting in, and the boat's got to be stronger, quicker, and there are definitely more risks and those kind of things. But at the core, preteens, it's funny how often, I don't know why, I think this is something God has given me a gift with, is that I can remember being a preteen, and I can remember watching Nickelodeon and the people getting slimed, and I can totally remember those years. And some of the same experiences that preteens are going through now are what I experienced. They're just in a different, it's a different culture now. It's a different reality, but the same processes are taking place in their minds and hearts and bodies and spirits.
That's a great analogy, the boat in the ocean.
Yeah, I just wrote it down. It's a great analogy, and I think accurate as well. So, Sean, you've helped to develop curriculums. You've helped work with local and regional, even national pastors in starting preteen ministries in their own churches. What advice would you give a parent today who's listening, who might have a 4th, 5th, or 6th grader, maybe several, in their home? How could they take a proactive role in this process of discipleship?
Okay, so we have something at 456 that we developed it was either the first or second retreat that we had, and we got together, and this is really kind of the crux of everything that we do, and it's called The Bike. So if you go to 456.org, the very first tab at the top says The Bike. And that's kind of what I think is the basis for everything that we try to do in preteen ministry, and everything for parents that we try to equip them with at our church. The bike metaphor is pretty simple. When you're teaching somebody to ride a bike, there comes a point where they are ready, and they may know it, they probably know it, but there comes a point where you have to let go of the bike and let them own it for themselves. And so, you're showing them the bike, and you're teaching them all about the bike. And here we're talking about faith, right? And you're showing them what it's like and giving them stories of when you rode the bike, and you're sitting them on it, but you're holding on tight to the back of that seat and to the handlebars, and you're running them up and down the street, but you're holding on tight. And that's children's ministries. Children's ministry, we really want the kids to know about God, and so we tell them stories about God and help them to know about God. But when kids enter the preteen years, they're ready to start to move the very first steps into faith ownership. They're ready to start to take their first steps from knowing about God to knowing God. And I think about Samuel. It's so interesting because he grew up in the temple, right, under Eli's care. And yet it says at the beginning of that chapter where God's speaking to Samuel, it says he didn't yet know the Lord. Now, how's that possible? How did he not know the Lord? He grew up in the temple. But there's a difference between knowing about and knowing. And that's the very first steps that in life, our very first steps of faith ownership can take place when we're preteens, just because of developmental stuff in the brain. We are now, when people reach those preteen years, they are ready to start to take their first steps of faith ownership. So the bike analogy then is when you're teaching somebody to ride a bike, you let go of the bike, but you're still running alongside them because there's the wobbliness, right? And this is preteen ministry. Preteen ministry and preteen parenting, as I've been discovering it's similar, is that we are letting go, but we're running alongside. And this is the same, with homework, with, can I go down the street to a friend's house? Okay, I'm going to let go here, but I'm going to run alongside and make sure that you make it there. And just taking those steps, I think the big mistake that we make in church a lot is that we move them from a children's ministry to a youth ministry. They're just going straight from, we're running up and down the street holding on to the bike, to now, okay, you're on your own, go have fun. And there's not that in-between step of helping them to learn how to do that. And that's preteen ministry, is helping them to learn how to own their own faith. So that's kind of been our model. And so all the resources on 456 are to that end, to help raise the value of preteen ministry and to help people to let go and run alongside.
I love that.
I love that, but I can remember the panic, that I felt when my kid was a preteen. I mean, mine are in college or married now, but I remember the panic, like for real as a dad, she just went to someone's house.
I know.
And I know that there's supposed to be other people there, and I'm having this sort of meltdown in my mind, and I'm looking at my wife going, "Now you checked on this, right? Did you
talk to the parent? Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like this is okay, right? Like we're not being bad parents." And
right.
I mean, so spiritually, I didn't hand wring as much because I had this sort of delusion that the pastor, you, Sean, would take care of my kid. Like that was your job. My job was just to keep them sort of,
going
safe.
to church to see the pastor.
So like as long as I got my car parked every week, in the church parking lot and dropped the kid off, that you would create this beautiful Christian clone and send them back to me. Is that not how it works?
No, I'm sorry.
No.
Man, that process, what takes place in a ministry that is intentional about helping preteens take those first steps, there's a lot of questions being asked, and questions, being heard. And I think parents can do the same thing as with their preteen, is ask lots of questions. In fact, if you check out the bike tab on 456, there's a thing there that says how to, and it gives you like 5 different tools that you can use. And they work in ministry, but they would also work for parents. 5 different tools to help to let go of the bike. And there's a lot more than just 5, but these are 5 that we have developed and used consistently in our preteen ministry. And so it's asking questions, making room for doubt is one of them.
Love that.
Because people think doubt is the opposite of faith, and okay, I get that, but if there's no room for doubt, there's no room for faith. Like the places where you have room for doubt, that's the only place that you have room for faith, because faith is being sure of what we hope for and confident of what we do not see. So if we don't see it, then then of course there's room for doubt. So you have to allow for that and allow questions from your preteens that demonstrate doubt, and that doubt is okay, and kind of walking them through that. And how do you navigate doubt as an adult? Your preteens are just now experiencing this for themselves. It used to be when they were younger, whatever mom and dad say or whatever the pastor says, I just accept that. Okay. You see things in black and white. But as they move into the preteen years, that's when the shades of gray can come out, and where they can start to explore possibilities and test hypothesis. They didn't have those abilities in their brains before, and they've got these new skills. And so acknowledging that and making room for that, that's another space.
Yeah.
Also giving power, giving control There's a bunch of different ideas on there for ministry leaders and for parents, giving choices. But it's it's not the kind of choices like, okay, do you want me to pack your lunch, or do you want to sit on a timeout?
Right,
do you want to do what I'm telling you to do, or do you want a consequence? That's not a choice. That's an ultimatum. Right?
I really like that you're pointing out that nuance. It has been our experience as well that this process of becoming, of transitioning from child to young adult is essential. And it appears that many parents are so afraid of the questions and the doubts that they over respond or they overreact, often driven by fear. And I love the idea of a collaboration between the preteen or youth pastor and the parent, where there is a communication that is ongoing, and there is an effort together with the church, the local church, working with families to really engage these 4th, 5th, 6th, even 7th graders with their faith. And so the fact that you have taken the time with a team of like-minded people to really do some of the hard lifting on this, where you guys have built curriculums, you've built a model, this bike model that describes what's happening and can be easily shared with other people. You've even got great videos on your website that people can download and watch either as parents or as pastors. All of those resources are on your site, and you guys serve diligently for that. And if no one has said it to you before, let me thank you for that. We are grateful for what you've done.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm just trying to do what God's called me to do, and He gave me a promise that if I would do what He called me to do, that it would bring Him great glory. And so that's what I'm trying to do here.
That's great.
Is bring the Lord glory, which I know you guys are doing too. And I would repeat back to you what you've said to me. Thank you for being a part of this movement. It's really a movement of parents and ministry leaders, and understanding the essential role that these years play in faith formation, and how we need to partner with our preteens and not be scared of them.
Right.
Here's just a quick tip too. When preteens ask questions, they aren't necessarily looking for your answer. They probably already have an answer, and they just want to know if you agree with their answer. And
that's a great distinction. That's really, really good.
And so oftentimes when they ask a question, I'll just say, what do you think? And then let them share their answer, and then I'll say, that's a great answer. That's so much more powerful and empowering for them than giving them answers.
That's a great tip. I'm going to use that. That's really good.
Yeah, so for parents out there who are listening, I think we could go for over an hour getting and sharing these anecdotal experiences. I want you to go to 456.org and find out for yourself just the depth and breadth of resources that are available there, whether you're a parent, a pastor, maybe you're a volunteer who's wanting to start a preteen ministry in your local church. Sean is a fantastic place to start that sort of journey, and I would highly recommend him. I know he has an online ministry conference each year for preteen ministers. Tell us real quick about that.
Oh, sure. Yeah. A couple years ago, we switched to an online format. I guess it was last year. We switched to an online format for our conference, and it's just like attending a conference. So there are main sessions, there are breakout sessions. In fact, you guys are doing some breakout sessions at that. And it's, imagine you're at a conference, and you can even get your whole team together, or a bunch of people from your church, small group leaders or whoever works with the preteens at your church. And you just pay for one access point. and then you can attend the conference. And there's even like a hangout space where you click on it. So imagine on your screen you can see the map of the conference center, and you just click on wherever you want to go, whatever room you want to go into, wherever the breakouts and main sessions, and even the resource center. So basically, we've taken an online conference and just taken out all the walking. I mean, taking a physical conference and taken out all the walking.
Yeah, saved our feet.
And airplane costs and hotel costs.
That's right.
And
Absolutely.
food costs and
Yeah.
all that. So.
Well, I wanted to make sure our listeners heard about that, and you can find all this again at 456.org. That's the number spelled out, so it's FOURFIVESIX.org. And Sean, we want to thank you again for being on the Brilliantly Brave podcast. We are fans of you. We are grateful for all the work that you pioneered, at least in the last 2 decades, for Christian ministry to tweens. And may God richly bless you for your efforts.
Thank you.
Parents, remember, even if you may not feel brilliant or brave, you are. For God gave us a spirit not of fear, but of power, and love, and self-control. And I am not ashamed, for I know whom I have believed. I am convinced that he is able to guard until that day what has been entrusted to me. 2 Timothy 1:7 and 13. This podcast is a service of iShine Ministries and the Tween Gospel Alliance. All rights reserved. Donations to Brilliantly Brave are tax-deductible at iShineLive.com. Review and subscribe to this podcast on SoundCloud, Stitcher, iTunes, or on our webpage. And read our blog and connect with us at WordPress@BrilliantlyBrave.com. Thanks for joining us for another episode of Brilliantly Brave.
What our kids believe is going to define them for a lifetime. According to George Barna, by the age of 13, what a kid believes is what he'll die believing. For parents and for pastors, that's a frightening experience, especially if you've got an 11 or 12-year-old. At the iShine Ministries headquarters, this became a huge priority in the last year. We partnered with the Tween Gospel Alliance to bring you a brand new resource known as the Shock and Awe Study Guide. And I'm here with one of the co-founders of this entire program, Robert Beeson. Can you tell us, what is the Shock and Awe Study Guide?
It is awesome. More than that? Yeah. Okay. The Shock and Awe Study Guide is a super cool thing that either a parent can do with their kid, or a youth pastor can do with their students, or a children's pastor can do with their students. And here's the cool thing about it. It is apologetics for kids. So it's the really huge evidence and thoughts of apologetics wrapped in a way that is really tangible and simple for kids to understand, answering 4 primary questions. And they are, what if there's a God? What if the Bible is true? What if Jesus is who he said he was? And what if I'm part of that plan? And we believe if you can answer those 4 questions and you are drawn through evidence proving those 4 questions, that really it's gonna establish a pretty unshakable foundation of faith.
That sounds very helpful, especially if you're a parent or pastor and you're concerned about the condition of your child's faith, what they believe, what the voices of culture are telling them. If that's you and you're interested, go to iShineLive.com and check out in our web store the Shock and Awe Study Guide. It has a digital cloud video base, so it's 4 studies in a small paperback volume for $9, and it has 4 videos that go with 4 studies. It can be done in a weekend, it can be done over a month, or it can be done bi-monthly, however you need it. It is a fantastic resource that I have used as a pastor in my own home church, and I have been impressed. So check it out.
Check it out.